In the final analysis, this whole assault on free will is really an assault on the human soul. And it's nihilistic. It's trying to lead us down a road which says, you don't matter. This doesn't matter. This life doesn't matter. Free will only has meaning if you have a body or a person in a situation. So I want you to think of choice as parameters and a space of possibilities, not as strict deterministic outcomes. So my whole point in doing this video is to defend the idea of freedom and to help us realize that freedom doesn't mean that you're free from every single constraint. It is about how you operate within the constraints. It is what it is. It's what we do with it that matters.
And married to that is the sense that I can decide what to do next, right? I am an agent who can pay attention to the cup. I can listen to sounds. There's certain things that I can't control. Certain things are happening to me and I just can't control them. So for instance, if someone asks, well, can you not hear a sound, right? Like, don't hear the next sound. Don't hear anything for a second, or don't hear, I'm snapping my fingers. Don't hear this. Where's your free will?
Okay. So let's talk about this for a minute. What he's doing now is what he was doing at the beginning of the video, which is arguing that because we experience content, I'm looking at this screen right now in front of me. I have a microphone in front of me. There's words coming out of my mouth. There's sounds out there on the street. There's light pouring in through the window, right? I can see in the camera, there's a bookshelf behind me with art and books on it. Because I don't have control over that, the fact that those things are happening perceptually means that I'm not free to make choices. That is a horrible argument, and it's not very sophisticated. What that demonstrates is that we don't control perceptual inflow. But it says nothing about how we respond to what comes in. It says nothing about the complexity of the interaction between my environment and myself, right? It says nothing about my ability to assess, engage, to will, to decide, to interpret. I might interpret something and decide I want something different. Oh, wow, the light is coming in. It's a little bright for me, and I've got a mild headache, so I'm going to shut the shutters a little more. That's a choice, right? Now you could say, well, that's not a free choice because you were preconditioned by your biochemistry to do exactly what you just did, okay? But that's a circular argument. It starts with the premise that choice doesn't exist. It then uses a statement that doesn't demonstrate anything, and then ends up right back at the conclusion. So the fact that we are perceiving, feeling, sensing, all that says is that we are an organism, a human being that is conscious and is presented with a world which is beyond our ability to control. I can't control the fact that I'm sitting on a chair that is holding me. I can't control the physics of the chair, right? Now I can get up, but I can't control the dynamic of me being on the chair, right? That's physics. I can't control that this table's here. It's here right now in this moment. Now I can move it, but I can't control that right now in this second. It's right here. That has nothing to do with free will. So, and also the fact that some of you will argue, well, you have emotions and you have inside impulses that you can't control. Well, to some extent, we need to unpack this a little bit. I can't control every sensation and every emotion, but I can certainly control how I respond to it. And I don't accept the idea that the self is an illusion. So I believe that we have souls, and that consciousness has to do with being a soul that is God-given, and that we don't live in a meaningless random universe. that we are beings that have the ability to sense and perceive and respond, and that freedom is about being embodied and making meaningful choices within that embodiment, and that we have all these different inputs which we get to interpret. Now, we can't control everything that we find valuable or not interesting or attractive or repulsive. We have certain embedded systems that genetically, neurologically prime us to initially be predisposed to react in certain ways, right? But that does not confine us. That merely gives us a constraining input. Then we have to choose and react. For example, have you ever found yourself starting to get angry at somebody and then you just said, wait a second, I don't want to lose my temper because I have a higher value than the anger value that says love your neighbor. So instead of letting myself get angry, I'm going to try to regulate that impulse and quiet it down and not be reactive to this person, even though I could. You see, the fact that we have an impulse doesn't automatically mean that we are controlled by it. I've been sober for, I don't know, a long time now, since 2010, so 16 years, from drugs and alcohol. When I was a teenager, I had a drug and alcohol abuse issue. And my sobriety was a choice, right? Because if you believe in Sam Harris's determinism, then I never had a choice to use drugs and alcohol, and it was just happening to me. And then I never had a choice to get sober. It was just happening to me. But that's not how it happened at all. I had to work really hard on myself as an agent to not let those factors determine me. Now, I couldn't control that I liked the feeling of alcohol. I liked it. I enjoyed it. There was a part of me that enjoyed it. But I could control the fact that all things being considered, it was affecting my family relationships. It was affecting my life as a very, very young man, a teenager. It was affecting my ability to grow and become and learn. All these other factors were also inputs. And the role of consciousness is to integrate the inputs and make choices. So Sam is saying because we can't control the inputs, therefore the choices have no meaning. And what I am saying is the inputs are the information upon which we interpret and make decisions and make choices. Without inputs, choices have no meaning. So the very thing that he says negates free will, I believe supports it. Because without a body, without some sort of constraining reality, no choice that we could ever make would have any relevance or meaning. There wouldn't be any such thing as choice, because choice demands specificity and personhood. You have to be in a specific situation to make a choice. There's no such thing as a general situation. Every situation you've ever been in your life is specific. And I believe this is why the incarnation of Christ is such an important fact of reality, that being embodied is essential to what it means to be a person. And being a person means that you're always specific. You're always in a situation. You're always what Martin Heidegger calls thrown. Okay? So think about this for a second. It's really common sense when you just unpack it. Free will only has meaning if you, one, have a body or a person in a situation. Okay? Free will has no meaning if you're a collection of particles that doesn't exist in relationship to space and time and have no personhood. So his argument is circular because it assumes the premises that he wants to conclude. Okay? But I would argue that because we have bodies, because we have consciousness, because we can demonstrate that these things exist, because we have relationships and motivations and goals, all these things are evidence for the fact that choice matters, not evidence against it. So I believe in the final analysis, this whole assault on free will is really an assault on the human soul. And it's nihilistic. It's trying to lead us down a road which says, you don't matter. This doesn't matter. This life doesn't matter. It's an operational convenience. Those who would try to say that this is somehow a philosophically sophisticated position can only do so by erecting these nonsensical premises and making them sound scientific, when they're really not scientific. So my whole point in doing this video is to defend the idea of freedom and to help us realize that freedom doesn't mean that you're free from every single constraint. It is about how you operate within the constraints. It is what it is. It's what we do with it that matters. Right now in this moment, I'm in the moment that I'm in. And there are many possibilities of what I could do next. It's my choice. What I do with it matters. Even if in the last moment I was angry, I was self-shaming myself, I was in this horrible state of mind, right? In this moment, anything I could make a choice to try something different. That's the whole premise of transformational psychology. That's the whole premise of repentance, of making a turn. Without free will, none of it matters. None of it makes sense. And if you're one of those people who is convinced by Sam's argument, then hold his feet to the fire and you yourself hold yourself to the language standards. You cannot use the word self. You cannot use the word I. You cannot use the word you. You cannot say I want something. You have to describe everything in objective principles. You should speak in coded computer language, which is impossible. So you can't even live in the very world that you're trying to tell me exists. You don't live in that world where free will doesn't exist. It's a conceptual fantasy that's been made up that you're putting on and telling everyone, hey, you don't have free will. You don't live in that world where you don't have free will. You don't speak that way. You can't convince me that it's an illusion without just stating it. You have to demonstrate things. We can't just state things. Demonstrate to me why you don't have freedom. Demonstrate it without conflating a bunch of unproven premises. Quantum mechanics shows that reality is indeterminate, meaning that it's not able to be predicted with certainty. So we know that even the universe doesn't operate deterministically. Now, scientists sometimes try to say it's randomness or chaos, or they'll say noise or stochasticism. Those are all words for randomness. And what that really means is that we don't understand it. So when we don't understand something, we call it random when we can't predict it. That's all it means. So yes, quantum mechanics, at the very least, shows that reality is indeterminate as far as I can tell. So, and I don't believe that this is just an intellectually inconsequential, harmless conversation. I don't think it's harmless to run around teaching people they don't have free will. I think it's a damaging, untrue, and functionally ridiculous statement. Nobody lives that way. And if you can't live it, how true is your philosophy really? If it doesn't conform to the pattern of reality that you experience on a day-to-day basis as a human being, if you can't map it on to the dynamics of your life, and it's just this idea, how real is it? I'm grateful that I have free will. I'm grateful that I am a soul and not just a blob of particles that doesn't really exist. I'm grateful, and I believe it's the basis of meaning. So unless you believe that we live in a truly nihilistic universe then I think we have to accept that free will is real, and to push back when people try to tell us that it's fake. And at the very least, ask them to demonstrate their position more clearly without just saying, you don't have a choice because you have biochemistry. So your blood is pumping, your heart is pumping, and your blood is flowing, and you have all these hormones and all these neurons firing, and all those things are happening, and you're just along for the ride because I said so. It's like, okay, well, that's not the only interpretation of biology. that's your idea. But biology doesn't necessitate that we don't believe in free will. It just shows that we have a vehicle. It just shows that we have an embodied reality. Right? Just like when you're in if you're in a car, you have a vehicle, and there are certain things you can do and certain things you can't do in a car. The car's not a boat, so I don't recommend driving it off the bridge. Trying to see if you can float. The car has parameters, but within those parameters, you can take a left turn, you can take a right turn, you can go 80 or you can go 10, right? You have constraints which enable possibilities. Now, if you weren't in a car, none of those things matter because now all of a sudden you're not driving, so it doesn't matter what choices you have when you're in the car when you're not in the car. The choices that we have only matter to the situation that we're in. So I want you to think of choice as parameters and a space of possibilities, not as strict deterministic outcomes. Choice is about what we do within the space we've been given. I love when St. Paul talks about the gifts we've been given by the Spirit. So think about that in terms of free will. We have a certain gift, whether it's to teach, to encourage, whatever it might be, and that you can consider that as sort of a parameter space. There's a lot of different ways you could do that. So your free will is about how you want to put it into practice. How do you want to work with it, right? Or we all have different sins that we struggle with. We all have a different cross to bear, right? Some people struggle with certain temptations more than others because that's our unique embodied situation. Some of that might be because of our genetics. Some of that might be because of our spiritual path. Some of that might be because of our life history. Some of that might be because of just things that are outside of our control in our life circumstance right now. And that's our cross to bear. But it's what we do within those parameters that matter. That's the space of value. So free will is never about not having constraints. It's about what you do within the space that you're given. What Sam does is what's called a straw man argument of free will. You can't control that you have thoughts or feelings, or you can't control that you have biochemistry. Therefore, you don't have free will. You can't control the sound that you just heard outside. Therefore, it's not free. Give me a break. Does this really need to be unpacked so deeply? I guess so. I guess so. I do really think it's important that we understand we have a soul. Having a soul is fundamental to this whole free will notion. If you don't have a soul, then you're back to being a robot with the illusion of having consciousness.